So usually when we think of a threat, we picture something um, physical, like a locked door being rattled, or maybe a shadow in an alleyway, something
Right.
you can actually see, something you can point to and say, there is the
Yeah.
danger.
Like a tangible enemy. Yeah. Which is terrifying, sure, but it's concrete. You know exactly what you're running from, and you know when you finally put a wall between you and it.
Yeah, but when you step into the world of psychological stalking, that locked door suddenly feels, totally useless. You're fighting a phantom.
Yeah.
It's just a voice on the phone that knows exactly what you're wearing, who you were just talking to, where you walked, and, well, you can't lock out a voice.
No, you can't.
And that invisible, just suffocating threat is exactly where we begin today. We are looking at the unsolved 1980 disappearance and murder of Dorothy Jane Scott,
So Dorothy was 32 years old, a single mother living in Anaheim, California.
raising her 4-year-old son.
Yeah, Sean. And by all accounts, she lived a very, very quiet life. She was a devout Christian, didn't drink, didn't use drugs, and really preferred staying home.
But her day job put her in a totally different environment, right?
Yeah, she worked as a secretary for two jointly owned shops in Anaheim. Swinger Psych Shop, which sold psychedelic items and things like that, and John's Head Shop.
Oh, wow. Okay, so quite the contrast from her home life.
Total contrast. So she was interacting with a really wide, eclectic variety of people on a daily basis. And then, months before she vanished, she started getting calls at her workplace.
From a customer.
Well, an unidentified man.
Mm-hmm.
He would call, and he would alternate between, like, obsessively professing his love for her and then violently threatening to kill her.
Ugh. Which is just terrifying. But, it's easy for people on the outside to dismiss phone calls as just a crank, right? Like someone
Yeah.
just messing around.
Sure, but this guy proved he wasn't just dialing random numbers.
Right.
He proved he was watching her.
Like actually physically watching her.
Yes. One afternoon, he called the shop and told her to go outside because he had something for her.
Oh, no.
Yeah. She walked out to the parking lot, and there was a single dead red rose left right on the windshield of her car.
Okay, so this wasn't just a voice on the phone anymore. He was physically invading her space.
It's a classic escalation tactic.
Right.
It bridges that gap between a distant threat and a physical reality. He was demonstrating that he was close enough to touch her car, which, meant he was close enough to touch her.
That is chilling.
And it culminated in one specific horrifying call where he warned her that he would get her alone and, quote, cut you up into bits so no one will ever find you.
Oh, my God. Dorothy must have been beside herself.
She was so terrified she actually looked into buying a handgun.
Really?
Yeah, but because she had a 4-year-old at home, she opted to start taking karate lessons instead.
Okay, that makes sense.
And this was just about a week before she disappeared.
Okay, let's unpack this for a second. What stands out to you here? Because if she was receiving these highly specific, terrifying calls at a commercial business
Right.
over a period of months, why couldn't the authorities or even her employer just intervene and trace the calls from the head shop? Like, catch the guy before it escalated this far?
What's fascinating here is that it comes down to the stark reality of telecommunications technology in 1980.
Oh, right. Because today, digital tracing is instantaneous.
Exactly. You call 911 today, they know where you are. But back then, phone networks were essentially a massive series of physical analog switches.
Like actual mechanical parts moving.
Right. So tracing a call was a manual trap and trace process. A phone company operator had to physically track which circuits the signal was passing through, junction by junction.
So like trying to follow a train by manually checking which tracks it switched onto.
That is a perfect analogy.
Yeah.
And the crucial factor is that the caller had to stay on the line for several minutes for that trace to actually complete.
Oh, wow. So if they hang
If
up...
the stalker was at a payphone, or if they hung up quickly, which this stalker deliberately did, the signal just vanished.
Wow.
Tracing it was practically impossible without a massive, pre-planned sting operation where they hold the line open. And honestly, police departments in 1980 simply didn't allocate those kinds of resources to harassment complaints.
Unless a physical assault had already occurred, I'm guessing.
Exactly.
Which leaves Dorothy completely isolated. You'd think starting karate lessons and changing her routine would give her some sense of control.
You'd hope so.
But the terrifying reality of stalking is that the predator sets the timetable.
What they do.
And his timetable culminated on the night of May 28th, 1980. And the timeline here is incredibly specific, so we need to walk through it carefully.
Yeah, and it starts with a completely mundane event. Dorothy is at a 9:00 p.m. employee meeting.
Right, late meeting.
Right.
Yeah.
During this meeting, she and her coworker, Pam Head, noticed that another coworker, Conrad Bostron, is looking really sick.
He had a bite, right.
Yeah, he has this swollen red mark on his arm, and they realize he's actually suffered a black widow spider bite.
Oh, wow. So Dorothy, being the kind of person she was, volunteers to drive him to the emergency room at the UC Irvine Medical Center.
In her 1973 white Toyota station wagon.
And Pam goes with them.
Wow.
And on the drive over, there is this detail that seems totally insignificant at the time.
But it becomes the cornerstone of the entire mystery later.
Exactly. They stop at Dorothy's parents' house in Anaheim so she can check on her sleeping son.
Yeah.
And while she's inside the house, Dorothy changes her outfit. She swaps the black scarf she was wearing for a red one.
Right, remember that scarf?
Yeah.
So they finally get to the hospital. Pam and Dorothy wait together in the ER waiting room while Conrad is getting treated.
Right.
And Pam later confirmed to police unequivocally that Dorothy never left her side, except for maybe a quick trip to the restroom, but she absolutely never used the public payphone in the waiting room.
Right, which means she wasn't calling anyone to tell them where she was.
Correct. No one knew she was there. So Conrad is discharged around 11 p.m.
Which is pretty late.
Yeah, and he's obviously not feeling great, so Dorothy tells Pam and Conrad to just wait near the exit, and she'll go out to the dark parking lot alone to bring the car around.
Just to save him the walk.
Exactly. So Pam and Conrad go to the pharmacy counter to fill his prescription, and then they wait at the automatic doors.
Just waiting for her to pull up.
Right. Minutes pass,
Yeah.
and suddenly they see Dorothy's white Toyota station wagon speeding toward them.
But the car doesn't stop. And the
Ah.
high beams are blazing, like completely blinding Cam and Conrad. They're waving their arms, trying to get her attention, but the car just speeds right past the doors.
It takes a sharp right turn out of the hospital parking lot and just vanishes into the night.
Pam and Conrad must have been so confused.
They were. I mean, they assumed Dorothy had suddenly remembered an emergency with her son, or maybe panicked about something and just took off.
Right, they had no idea.
So they waited at the hospital for hours before finally calling the police to report her missing.
But here's where it gets really interesting to me. If the high beams were blinding them, they couldn't actually see into the cabin of the car.
That's right.
So we don't actually know Dorothy was the one behind the wheel. Couldn't the high beams have been a deliberate tactic by the killer to hide his identity as he drove her own car past her friends?
If we connect this to the bigger picture, absolutely. It is a highly effective disorientation tactic used by predators.
Flooding the visual field with light.
Exactly. Hitting the high beams immediately strips witnesses of their night vision and completely obscures the driver's silhouette.
Wow.
You can't identify a face. You can't even identify a gender behind a wall of light like that.
And the stark transition there is just chilling. I mean, 1 minute she's doing a favor for a coworker walking across a hospital parking lot. The next, she's the victim of a lightning-fast abduction.
Yeah.
And the perpetrator had the absolute nerve to drive her own car directly past her waiting friends.
It's brazen. And the tragic confirmation of all this comes just a few hours later. At 4:30 a.m., Dorothy's Toyota is found burning in an alleyway in Santa Ana,
That's like, what, 10 miles away?
about 10 miles away from the medical center, and there's no sign of Dorothy, and the fire has completely destroyed any physical evidence inside the vehicle.
Ugh, of course. And the confusion of that night immediately bleeds into this twisted, years-long psychological campaign, because the physical abduction was really just phase 1 for this killer.
Yeah, phase 2 was pure psychological torture.
Exactly. About a week after she vanishes, the phone rings at her parents' house. An unidentified man tells her mother, Vera, simply, "I've got her," and hangs up.
It's just brutal.
And this wasn't a one-off cruel prank. This man proceeds to call Vera almost every single Wednesday afternoon for 4 years.
4 years. And he would taunt her. Sometimes he claimed he had Dorothy captive. Other times he claimed he had already killed her.
Just playing games with a grieving mother.
Yeah. And the calls were always brief, again, avoiding any chance of a trace, just long enough to inflict maximum psychological pain before the line went dead.
It's like a twisted game of cat and mouse. But he didn't just limit it to the family, right? He wanted a bigger audience.
He went to the media.
Yeah. On June 12th, 1980, the Orange County Register ran a story about the disappearance. And almost immediately after it went to print, an anonymous man called the managing editor of the paper.
Which is incredibly risky.
Right. And he said, quote, "I killed Dorothy Scott. She was my love. I caught her cheating with another man. She denied having someone else. I killed her.
The killer's pathology is entirely laid bare in that statement right there.
How so?
I caught her cheating with another man.
Ah.
Dorothy wasn't dating anyone, let alone this stalker. It reveals a deeply delusional sense of ownership.
Like she was his property.
Exactly. In his twisted reality, she belonged to him. The act of taking a male coworker to the hospital was perceived as a betrayal, an infidelity.
Wow. But wait, how do we know this caller to the newspaper wasn't just, someone who read the article and wanted attention?
Because the caller provided details to the editor that had been completely withheld from the public by the police.
The insider knowledge.
Right. He specifically mentioned that her coworker had been treated for a spider bite.
Which wasn't in the paper.
Nope. And he explicitly mentioned that Dorothy had changed her black scarf to a red scarf that night.
Oh, man. So that proves he was there.
Absolutely. But he also claimed that Dorothy had phoned him from the emergency room to tell him where she was.
Which we know is a lie.
Right, because Pam had swore Dorothy never touched the payphone.
So why lie about that part?
He was likely trying to inject his own narrative into the investigation, making it seem like she reached out to him willingly.
Oh, to justify his delusion.
Exactly. But those withheld details, the bite and the scarf, were his way of authenticating himself to the press.
He had to prove he was the real deal. But how can a killer sustain this level of obsession and risk exposure by calling the parents every week for 4 years?
He sustained the calls to the mother because, in his mind, the relationship hadn't ended with Dorothy's death.
Oh.
Taunting Vera was his way of maintaining control and just prolonging his connection to his victim.
That's so sick.
He actually only stopped calling when Jacob, Dorothy's father, happened to answer the phone one evening in April 1984.
Oh, really?
Yeah, the caller seemed stunned to hear a male voice, claimed he had the wrong number, and hung up for good.
Just like a coward. And just a few months after those calls stopped, in August 1984, the physical search came to a tragic end.
It did.
Construction workers were laying pipe near Santa Ana Canyon Road up in the Anaheim Hills, and they found charred human and dog bones in the brush.
Alongside the remains, they found a turquoise ring and a watch.
And the watch is key here.
Yeah, the watch had stopped dead at 12:30 a.m.
Which is just an hour after the abduction.
That stopped watch is a vital piece of the timeline. It strongly suggests she was murdered almost immediately after she was abducted.
Dental records did confirm it was Dorothy?
They did. But the autopsy ultimately couldn't determine the cause of death because the remains had been subjected to a brush fire in 1982.
Right, further obscuring any forensic evidence.
Exactly.
So what does this all mean? The narrative of this phantom stalker dominated the local news, and it's easy to see why. But when you dive into the source material, especially the deep analysis in those Reddit threads from people poring over the cold case files, a much more infuriating picture emerges.
It really does.
It highlights some glaring systemic failures with the initial police response.
This is where we have to look critically at the institutional machinery. The disappearance happened at the UC Irvine Medical Center, which meant the initial jurisdiction fell to the UC Irvine campus police.
Not the local city departments.
Right. And according to the research compiled on this case, the campus police employed what they officially called a low-profile strategy in those crucial first days.
Okay, let's talk about what low profile actually means here, because Dorothy's father, Jacob, was absolutely furious about this.
Yeah, every right to be.
He was essentially told by campus police to keep quiet. They didn't issue an all-points bulletin. They didn't do a media blitz with her photo.
And why?
Because the university graduation was coming up on June 14th, just 2 weeks later. This wasn't a police investigation. It was a PR containment strategy.
Treat the missing woman like a bad earnings report you want to hide from the parents and students until after the graduation ceremonies are over.
Exactly.
The campus police chief answered directly to the university chancellor, not to a city mayor or a city council. Their primary mandate was campus security and reputation.
Not complex homicide investigation.
Right. Furthermore, because of this lack of early publicity and aggressive evidence gathering, the FBI initially declined to get involved.
Citing a lack of evidence that an interstate kidnapping had occurred. I mean, a woman's car is found burning 10 miles away and she is missing, but there's a lack of evidence. It makes you wonder.
This raises an important question, doesn't it?
Yeah, what if the initial calls to the family weren't from the killer at all? What if they were from a friend or family member trying to manufacture evidence to force the FBI to take the case since the campus police were burying it?
That is, it's a completely valid point to raise. It is entirely plausible that early desperation tactics could have muddied the waters, considering how stonewalled the family felt.
Right.
But regardless of who made that very first call to the house, the low-profile strategy definitively destroyed the critical first 48 hours of the investigation.
Because when you don't alert the public, you silence potential witnesses before they even know they hold a piece of the puzzle.
Exactly.
Then because of that PR containment, vital clues just slip through the cracks. Like buried deep in the original witness statements, Pam and Conrad noted that there was a small car driving directly in front of Dorothy's speeding station wagon as it left the parking lot.
The second car theory.
Yes. Was that an accomplice? Was it the killer's actual vehicle and he was forcing Dorothy to follow him?
We don't know.
We don't know because no one put out a public call for information about a small car leading a white Toyota.
You also have to consider the environment of the abduction itself. The UCI Medical Center wasn't just an isolated hospital.
Right, look at the map.
It was situated directly adjacent to the county probation department, a juvenile detention center, and animal control. It was an area that drew a wide, sometimes volatile demographic.
That's a lot of foot traffic.
And additionally, Dorothy walked out to that parking lot at roughly 11:00 p.m. That coincides perfectly with a standard hospital shift change.
Right. The parking lot wouldn't have been deserted at all. It would have been active with arriving night shift nurses and departing evening staff.
Someone walking to their car might have seen a struggle, or someone lurking around Dorothy's Toyota.
But because the police kept it quiet, those hospital workers went home, went to sleep, and were never asked what they saw while their memories were fresh.
And this suppression of early evidence is exactly why alternative suspects were completely overlooked.
Let's talk about those.
The Reddit archives highlight a few chilling leads that were active in the area at that exact time. For instance, there was a known group of 4 Vietnamese men committing a spree of violent abductions and assaults in Orange County.
But why would a gang like that be hanging around a hospital parking lot?
Because one of those 4 men suffered from leprosy,
Oh.
which is a condition requiring highly specific medical treatment and medications that might draw them to a major medical center complex.
Wow. Okay.
It provides a geographical and circumstantial anchor for them to be in that specific lot.
And then there's the suspect raised by Dorothy's own son years later, a man named Mike Butler.
Yes.
He was the brother of a co-worker at the head shop. He was rumored to be heavily involved in cult activity, and more importantly, he was known to be obsessed with Dorothy.
Mike Butler is a really compelling alternate lead for several reasons. He fits the profile of a local obsessive, obviously, but he also lived in the remote Santiago Mountains. That means he had intimate geographical knowledge of the rugged, isolated terrain in the Anaheim Hills.
Which is the exact area where Dorothy's remains were eventually dumped.
Exactly.
But because the initial dragnet was deliberately suppressed by campus police worrying about graduation, any physical evidence or witness sightings tying the Vietnamese gang, or Mike Butler, or the unknown stalker to the parking lot that night just evaporated.
The trail went permanently cold before it was ever really allowed to get warm.
Which is why understanding the mechanics of this case is so vital for you listening. It isn't just about a terrifying phantom in the shadow.
No, it's a stark, tragic lesson in how jurisdictional silos and institutional priorities can severely hinder justice.
Right.
When a university police force prioritizes public relations over a missing persons protocol, the window to catch a killer closes. It reminds you that official narratives, like being told to keep a low profile for the good of the investigation, must sometimes be fiercely questioned by the public and the family.
It's devastating. You have a devoted mother stalked by an invisible predator, a violent abduction, and an institution that just looked the other way.
It's a heavy takeaway.
It is. But as we wrap up this deep dive, I want to leave you with one final provocative thought to mull over, building on the evidence we've just laid out.
Okay.
We know the killer called the newspaper and specifically authenticated himself by mentioning the spider bite and the red scarf.
Yes, the withheld details.
But remember the timeline of that night.
Right.
Dorothy didn't wear the red scarf to her employee meeting. She was wearing a black one.
Oh, right.
She only changed into that red scarf at her parents' house during a brief stop on the drive to the hospital.
Oh, wow. It fundamentally changes the geography of the crime.
Exactly. Think about it. It means the killer wasn't just randomly lurking in the dark at the medical center parking lot waiting for an opportunity.
No, he couldn't have been.
If he knew about the red scarf, he had to have been actively tailing her car through the city streets that night.
He followed her from the head shop to the meeting.
Yes. He watched her pull into her parents' driveway. He watched her walk inside. He waited in the dark and watched her come back out wearing red, and then followed her all the way to the emergency room.
That is just wow.
The Phantom wasn't just a voice on the phone. He was in her rearview mirror the entire night, watching her every single move long before she ever parked at the hospital.
It shifts the entire complexion of the event from a crime of opportunity in a dark lot to a highly calculated, sustained hunt.
It really does. It shows you just how relentless that invisible threat truly was. Thank you for joining us on this deep dive. Keep questioning the official narratives, keep looking past the surface, and never stop exploring the unknown. We'll catch you on the next one.